youthful teacher. You have been here before. I remember first time your presentation was about the Yoga Sutra of Patanjali. Second time you spoke about Karma Yoga.
That's right.
Both were excellent, well received by the viewers. I want to discuss with you today the mind, how, as you know, when we talk about yoga, a lot of people quickly jump to that, the exercise aspect of it.
Right.
But what is yoga in its entirety? Without getting into details, could you just make it simpler for the listeners, please?
Sure. And before that, I would like to thank the audience, without whose support I wouldn't be here today. And answering your question about yoga, it is one of the most excellent gifts that India has given, or at least to me. I wouldn't say to the world, but at least to me, I've benefited a lot. Yoga is not an isolated entity, but it is a part of life. Patanjali had defined an 8-part yoga, starting with personal code of conduct, the yamas, the niyamas, which is a social code of conduct, asanas for your body. Without a stable body, you can never have a stable mind. So for health, he defined asanas. Then pranayama, which is the breath controls, pratyahara and dharana, which we'll be talking about soon. But pratyahara and dharana is how to control the mind and unipoint focus on a particular object. So you're taking away all the other thoughts and focusing in your mind on what it should be focusing on. And finally, it culminates in samadhi, which is peace and self-realization.
Eternal peace, probably.
Exactly.
Self-realization. So looks like yoga, which is very comprehensive system of purifying the mind. But why is there so much emphasis on purifying the mind in yoga?
Well, to let you know that, I would say that nothing is possible without clarity of mind. And before getting into purifying the mind, I would like to talk or define purity in itself. Now, purity is not, as most people believe, an entity that you can pinpoint to. Purity in state of mind is something that is adulteration of mind from its existing state. In the body, if I say I'm taking any toxic chemicals, coffee, alcohol, drugs, it's going to impact the way I think. The same way, we are in an age of information explosion. You get to see TV, you get to see movies, a lot of things are impacting your mind, and it doesn't lead you to where your mind wants to go or intends to go. So this impurity, as you call it, is going to stifle you into a small box.
Well, isn't it true that the impurity for one person is non-impurity for somebody else? So who defines what is impurity?
Impurity is something that stops you from doing what you want to do. For example, if you're doing something with an agitated mind, I would say that is a mental impurity. If I'm saying to somebody, I love you. But if I'm agitated, I would say, yeah, I love you, so what? And that is going to cause an agitated mind to the other person. So your mind, when it is agitated, cannot do what it's intended to do.
So it transfers the agitation to the other person.
Exactly.
And pretty soon the whole group becomes agitated.
Exactly.
That makes a lot of sense, yes.
Yeah.
So purity, once again, let's carry it on. How does this purifying of mind helps us in our ultimate goal of salvation?
Impurity comes because we allow them to come. Most of us are trained from our childhood to be expectation oriented. We should be having ambitions and goals. And expectations, when they are carried out, will stop you, or it will give you anger when those expectations fail. And that is why your mind is agitated. Now, yoga has an 8-part, like I told you, and part 4 and 5, after you control your breath, you try to control your mind. That's where you have expectation management. Now, you say, I'm doing my duty because I'm destined to do it. I'm not going to either be dejected about it or be happy about it. And there are certain exercises that you draw your mind inwards from the outward senses. So first you block, like it's detoxing for a drug program. You first block from watching TV, you stop doing certain things that are going to impact your mind. And withdrawing senses, your mind goes inwards and starts dwelling in its own nature.
So you become self-referenced.
Exactly.
And you are driven by what you want to do. Now that's very desirable. But is purifying also mind control?
Purifying, most people think purifying is self-hypnosis, or yoga or meditation is self-hypnosis. As most people define it, or at least as the Webster defines it, self-hypnosis is an induced state of mind by an external force, and self-hypnosis is an alteration of the mind. Yoga is exactly the opposite. In meditation, you're reverting the mind back to its original position, and you're not superimposing it with another layer. And I can give you a very good example of why you need to purify the mind.
Please.
Let's say you're gardening, and as a gardener, you have a small tree or small plant, and you put a fence around it, so a sheep will not eat it or a goat will not eat it.
Okay.
But when the tree grows out, when the plant grows to be a big tree, no matter how many goats or sheep or even monkeys jump on it, it's going to give you shade, it's going to give you fruits, and that is how the mind is. When you're tender, depression, anger, and other impurities can easily affect the mind. And it takes one person to consciously fence them and protect yourself from getting impure. So when the mind is pure and it grows spiritually, you have to take that fence off. Most people don't do that. Most people just keep the fence and the mind becomes very constricted. So
they become very narrow in their thinking?
exactly.
So is the impure nature of impurities related to culture of a person?
I would say nature of impurity depends on the upbringing of the person rather than culture. The same person of the same culture, as a person of a particular race brought up in a different culture is going to be impacted by that surrounding or upbringing.
So can we take a concrete example like a child who is in a family where there is violence? Now, how does he grow into a person who doesn't have violence in his life or her life?
The one thing is, I'm sorry for most people who who are exposed to violence, because childhood in itself is pure and you're born with no expectations. And when you grow in a violent family, it's going to affect you. And the child automatically thinks of escape routes. Some people end up schizophrenic, some people just end up cold. But the one way is for the child, depending on what age the child is, to start meditating. And one thing we call satsanga, associating with people who are peaceful, associating with people who are already pure and already having self-confidence. So if the child actually seeks good company, there are high chances that the child is going to grow up to be a strong child, else it's going to be exposed to violence when it grows up.
So let's say that child makes a good effort and tries and tries and tries. So now he's a 25-year-old person. Has he reached a state of permanent purity?
I wouldn't say so, because purity is a state of mind, and you don't take bath for a day and stop it for a year. It's a constant process. Impurities by their own nature just come and afflict them. It is our duty to very consciously and constantly try to evade them. Now if you don't evade them, there is no harm for other people, but it's going to harm you permanently.
So your impurities can also be explained as negative thoughts. Is that what these, or is there a big difference in your mind between these impurities and thoughts?
Impurity to me is an alteration of the mind and not allowing you to see your soul. I quote Ramakrishna Paramahamsa. He gives a very good example of a lake. Now when the lake is stable, you can see what is below the surface of the lake. But if you're going to take a stick-in product, you see all the sediments coming up, and it's not going to allow you to see things as they are below.
That's right.
So you cannot see the depth of your soul if your mind is constantly, it's rolling out an external impurities or external. It's going out, it's not going in. So calming the mind using particular techniques of withdrawing the senses and focusing them within yourself is going to, one, make you a much stronger person spiritually, and second, it's going to make you so strong you're going to go out and help other people achieve purity.
So you become a positive force for other people.
Exactly.
Your company becomes desirable for people who are not there yet.
Exactly.
One more question I have. So the problem I see in this society, there is so much emphasis on gratifying the senses. You go out, there is noise, there is music, there are movies, there are advertisements, there are constant bombardment on your senses. So how do you purify your mind in view of that? Have you got some practical strategies?
Well, again, as I said, there are two ways. One is you should first assess at what spiritual level you stand. So most people in an information age who have been brought up to be expectation or goal oriented, and the way they react to failure is different from the way a yogi reacts. So I would say that it should be a conscious, deliberate action of, let's say the mind is a child. You set ground rules, say go play, and suddenly you tell the child to stop and meditate once a week and increase it to say twice a week. And slowly, initially when you start meditating, your mind is going to run away in just 5 minutes.
Very common experience. Yes.
Exactly. And then what happens is slowly, as a very conscious and deliberate practice, your mind is going to start listening to you. It is like an elephant. The more you pull it, the more it's going to pull back.
That's right.
The best way is let it be and observe what it is doing. And then the mind starts settling down.
So in this world, very turbulent, I will call it, from a sensory perspective, it is possible to achieve that state of relative purity?
As long as there is commitment and the sincere motive to actually achieve it, it is absolutely positive. And I quote, Swami Vivekananda, he says there are two types of people. The one who are committed can achieve liberation in just 6 months.
6 months.
Yes, if you're really committed, really striving for it. And there are people who just eat in piecemeals. You want to do it 1 hour a day, then you want to skip 10 times and just have a feel-good factor. For them, it's going to take 3 or 10 lifetimes. You never know.
So total commitment to it. But will it not make you, Sundar, will it not make you somewhat unsuitable to survive and live in this modern society, Western society particularly?
I wouldn't say. I would quote you Raja Janak, who is a very famous character from Ramayana. He was called a Raja Rishi. So he was an administrator, and he was in charge of ruling a kingdom where you have to take care of everything and nothing can go wrong. So he was constantly in touch with his people, yet detached from pleasure and pain personally. So you develop a sense of detachment from the from dejectment and enjoyments, and then you lead a life of a secluded purity. I would call it secluded purity.
So that gives you a stability. That's a stable mind. So a purified mind is a stable mind. It means it is not going to be going through the roller coaster of the worldly pleasures and sadness and all this. And I can see that this kind of purified mind will be much more productive mind, I hope.
Exactly. And as an example for an agitated mind, let's say there is a doctor, a cardiologist. He constantly operates on people. He just cuts open hearts with professionalism. That is what I call it. His mind is detached from if it is going to be a success or a failure. But if his 2-year-old son falls off a stairs, and if he's small, there's a small scrape in the knee, he's going to be really terrified. He's going to be there, and I don't think he would be able to operate on his child with the same professionalism. So the mind should be trained to be detached like that of a cardiologist.
At your will. That's a very good example, in fact. And unless you have that kind of ability to detach yourself from these impurities, you will not be able to be happy in life.
Exactly.
Well, Sunder Rajan, thank you very much. And as usual, you have made a very complex, rather complex topic quite simple, and especially some of these strategies you have suggested are very practical. So I thank you very much on behalf of Aaradhna, and hopefully we will have another chance to talk about another aspect of Hinduism.
It's my pleasure. Thank you, Atalji.
Thank you very much.